our next speaker has always put other people first. So she actually not only gave me permission, but insisted that I start with acknowledging a couple of other people in the room before she speaks today. So today, I would like to bring your attention to two special guests in our room here today. You know that we are the Colorado chapter of PALTmed, and the national organization has an associate executive director and an executive director, Elizabeth Sobczak and Michelle Zinnert, who are both in the room with us here today. Yeah. And Michelle, today is your 3rd year work anniversary. April 24th is a special day. So congratulations, and thank you for all that you do for us. Thank you. So now I am very pleased to introduce you to our keynote speaker. Dr. Leslie Eber is an internist, she's a geriatrician, she's a medical director, and before she became the president of the National PALTmed organization, she was actually the president of our Colorado chapter. And so thank you, Dr. Eber, for all that you've done for us and all that you've taught me. And we welcome you today to give our keynote presentation on, I'm pulling it up right now, connection, capacity, and context.
Thank you so much. I have my sign. I'm just getting over severe laryngitis, so I hope you'll hang in here with me. And if my voice leaves me, I'm going to turn it over to my friend, Dr. Singh Pallet. Okay, let's get going. So I first want to start with a note of gratitude to this Colorado community who really built me up and taught me, served as a beacon for education and high-quality care, but is really the investment in each other. It's the colleagues and friends that has made all the difference. So it's the reason why the Colorado Annual Conference is such a beaming success. And I want to thank you all so much for setting the bar very high. I'm just so honored to be a part of this community. All right, let's get going. So these are the objectives. I'll let you read them. And, communication used to be considered a soft skill, something that was great but didn't really make a lot of difference. And now we really see through our research that how we communicate with our patients and families is a big deal. It can change outcomes. It can change quality measures. It can change the way the patients and the families feel about our community, our facility, and how they feel about the care that they're provided. So communication used to be considered a soft skill, but now it's considered an essential skill. So what I'd like to start off with is a communication challenge for all of us. Okay, so come with me. I want you to think of a time when you were really stressed. You maybe were in crisis, and someone was trying to talk to you and help you. They were trying to give you information. I want you to picture that scenario in your head right now. Okay. How did that communication go? Were you able to hear all the information? Were you able to retain it? Did you understand what the options were, what the best next steps? Maybe this information wasn't in your wheelhouse and you were kind of panicked. Research shows that when we are in this visceral reaction time, communication doesn't go that well. Because we know that the stress information communication connection is significant. We get information overload. And we know that it's important to acknowledge that the less well people are doing, the more they struggle with information awareness. We know that our nervous systems are the ultimate communication gatekeepers. Because those psychological drivers, they are often driving. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't share those facts and those really important information. But we have to really be so intentional about these communication moments where we walk in the room and we see people are not doing well. And we know that we want to ensure our information is accessible, and we want to be prepared, and we want our information to be effective and our communication to be effective. So how would we do this? How would we start to be better communicators in our facilities? So the first thing to do is to read the room. What is going on when we walk into that room? Are people in crisis? Has someone just realized that they're never going home? Have they realized their mortality is coming about them? Are they overwhelmed? Has this been their third move? They went from the hospital, maybe to an LTAC, now they're here, they're overwhelmed, and have they been through the ringer? Another type of context that I found was really interesting that really is pertinent to our space is this idea of pragmatic language ability. This was studied at MIT, and it's not only the context that we're seeing, but the phrases that we use in our communication are just as important to the accessibility of what we're saying as the words and ideas. So they did this really great example. People are leaving. So this has a nuanced effect. So people are leaving. Does this mean that people are leaving because the party's over? Are people leaving because the party is terrible? Or are people leaving because the police have come and this party is over? So that social and visual context is also really important. What else is important when you walk into the room? It's important that you walk into the room with some empathy. Tone matters, and in-person matters. We love telehealth, and that is a great alternative, but when we have the choice, in-person matters. And how we respond matters. We now know from research that coming in with compassion and some humility is really important. Being honest and transparent is very important right now, especially the transparency. If someone thinks that you're hiding something, kind of the game is over. There's kind of not much more to go there. But I would like to present the fact that we are the drug, that we have something to offer. We may not be able to cure metastatic cancer. We may not be able to end the end stage of COPD, but we can help with care and suffering. We can provide some coping skills, and we can help our patients. So this is my favorite slide of the whole presentation. I love this idea. It is about intellectual humility. So I love Reese's peanut butter cups. I love them. I dream about them sometimes at night. And if you offer me a Reese's peanut butter cup after this presentation, I am going to take you up on it. It is not that I am unaware that this is not part of the food groups. It's not that I think that Reese's peanut butter cups are very healthy for me, that they add something to me, but I love them. So we don't do, as all of us, everything that we know we're supposed to do. I'm going to walk a little bit farther after hearing Jennifer Stevens-Lasky. We know what's right to do, but we don't always do it. And that intellectual humility is when we walk in the door and talk to our patients and families to really understand that what we're asking of them may be really hard. We may be asking them to deal with their opiate use disorder, or maybe their alcoholism or obesity. And what we ask for is a big ask. Having that knowledge about that and the realization makes us better providers. So the first thing about communication is really trust. And I don't know if any of you heard the American College of Physicians just had their annual conference, and their keynote speaker was Ashish Jha, and he was fantastic. He is from Brown University, and this is what he said about communication and trust. He said, it used to be, before the email electronic world, that information was power. That the clinicians read all the articles from the New England Journal of Medicine, and we had that information, and that was our power. Now, you can get information from a lot of places, and some of it's not so great. But now, The new power is trust and authenticity. So if you walk in the room and people trust you, now you have that power. But I always wondered, how can we use trust if we haven't really had some time to build it? Let's find out. Okay. So this is from ACA, and we have our ACA chapter here. I love this tool, and they have a whole kind of tool series on the ACA website. But this is from Frances Fry. She is a Harvard professor for business. She's the person that helped Uber get out of the dust and, be elevated. I think she did a really good job. I love Uber Eats. And she said that trust is really from a three-legged stool. To build trust, you need these three things. You need to be logical. I can't tell you that if you drink grape juice, you're going to cure your alcoholism or your metastatic cancer. You'll never believe me again. You won't trust me. You need to be authentic. People need to think that you're being real when you're talking to them. They need to believe you. And then you need to have some empathy. Our patients need to know that we are invested in their care. We're invested in the outcome. We're on their team. If any one of these trust stools, that three-legged stool, is wobbly, then your trust is wobbly. Okay. So what else about being trust? So being trustworthy, more than good intentions, we need to be consistent, and they're seen in our actions. We know that trust can be built spoonfuls, but you can lose it in one moment. If I tell you that I'm going to come back and help you with that wound care and I don't, are you going to ask me again? Probably not. Building trust is also dose dependent. It has to be maintained to be meaningful. And trust is really based on that foundation of respect. It's bi-directional. I'm much more likely to trust you if you trust me. And that foundation of respect is everything. So 3 pearls about trust. Connecting with the patient's values is a great way to build trust. I hear this is really important to you. Name the feeling that you're hearing or seeing by nonverbal cues, and then approach with curiosity instead of with judgment. Judgment can be a real trust killer, and so we really want to be careful about that. All right, so every once in a while, we're going to check in today of things you can do today. So, enter with empathy, read the room. You are the drug. Building trust using those 3 pillars that we just talked about: logic, authenticity, and empathy, and leave judgment at the door. So now we're going to turn to listening, which is really one of the cornerstones of building trust and having better communication. So here are some of the basics. Put down your laptop, put down your phone, have some eye contact, sit down, be interested, put that agenda that you have in your mind. We all have that. I have to see Mrs. Jones. I have to remember to write those orders. Put it away. Do those nonverbal communication skills. Lean in, nod your head. People notice that. Silence is okay. It's really hard for me, but it's okay. Listening is a skill that we need to practice because it's really the creation of a connection. So the ACP, I'm not obsessed with them or anything, but they had this 3-part session about listening at the bedside, 3 levels of listening. I thought that they were really interesting, and I thought we'd go through them today. So level 1, how to start. Don't assume. And I love the example that they give. So a nurse says, "Can you, Dr. Eber, go see this patient? She's short of breath." So already, in my mind, I've got it going. Is she coughing? Do I need a chest x-ray? Is she having chest pain? I've got it all going on. So I walk in, and I've assumed a lot. I'm almost writing for the chest x-ray in my head. But instead I said, "So the nurse said that you were short of breath." And she says, "My daughter just got sent to the ER. I'm so nervous." So I would have missed all that, right? I would have been ordering the chest x-ray. I would be asking my questions instead of not assuming and asking a really good open-ended question. And then don't interrupt. So I have a poll. You guys can yell it out. How long do you think a provider goes into a room and talks to a patient? This is in seconds, unfortunately. How long does it take for the provider to interrupt the patient talking? Yell out something. 3 seconds. I like the 3-second one. Anybody else? I think I saw 18 seconds. What else? You're right. 15 seconds. So it takes 15 seconds before we completely take over the conversation. 15 seconds, it's really not very long. So that's something that we can work on, right? Because when you stop and listen, then people notice, oh my God, she was really listening to me. And we prevent that miscommunication. So Mrs. Jones, who was short of breath, and I was going about, are you coughing? Are you feeling ill? Are you hypoxic? I would have missed it, and we would have had that pretty big miscommunication. But people are pretty excited when you are listening to them. Okay, so level 2. Level 2 is what should we be noticing when we're listening? Is Mrs. Jones uncomfortable? Is she worried? Is she rubbing her hands? Does she have fear or concern? And then level 3 is when you know the patient really well. Where is the disconnect? I've seen Mrs. Jones 3 times. She's never wanted to go to the hospital. And now today she's like, I talked to my daughter, I really think I need to go to the hospital. So this is a disconnect. I'm hearing it now. And so now I want to pursue that. When we do these 3 levels of listening, we can ask them better questions. We can understand the patient's goals. And this is one of my other favorite parts of this presentation. We can avoid monologuing. I love monologuing. I do. I'm doing it right now. So it's so tempting. We have all this information that we really want to share with patients. And sometimes we do that and we kind of cut off the conversation. So that's really important for us to kind of realize. And then the number one thing is to check for understanding. So I've gone into Mrs. Jones, I've spent all this time, I've talked to her, and if I don't check in, I may leave and not understand that Mrs. Jones has really not understood what I said. So maybe I said, hey, we can do this here, and we, have a lot of options. But then she calls her daughter and says, Dr. Eber doesn't want me to go to the hospital. I'm like, well, that's not exactly what I said. So checking in for understanding is essential. Because now we know from the research that communication, instead of that monologuing, which I really love to do, is more about engagement. It's about having a connection and have a give and take. And so we really gain from that engagement, and we increase that satisfaction from the patient perspective. So meeting patient expectations, we know, not only good for outcomes, but good for the relationship between the facility and the providers and the patient and the family. If we're meeting their expectations, that's a game changer, right? And so having them engaged gives us that opportunity. So what does this look like in real life? So I'm going to tell you about one of my patients, a real patient. I had this patient about a couple of months ago, and I was writing this presentation, so it was on my mind. And I'm looking through her medication lists, and I see Suboxone, kind of a high dose, and then I see PRN oxycodone. Already I'm looking for benzodiazepines, and I'm thinking in my mind, my monologue is already going, and I'm about to walk in to meet her. And I decided, well, I'm going to try these 3 levels of listening. So instead of we have to do something about that PRN oxy idea, I'm going to see what she says. So I go in and I introduce myself. Hi, I'm Dr. Eber. And I said, how are you? Tell me how things are going. And she was young. And she said, I wanted to talk with you. I've been about a month and a half in the hospital. I've been a month and a half in an LTAC. I've had this gluteal wound, and I had these really painful wound care changes. So they put me on PRN oxy. This is what she said to me. And she's like, I've had opiate use disorder for 8 years. and I've been really stable. I wonder if you can help me get off this PRN oxycodone. I think once I start moving and doing the exercises, I think that's my best bet to deal with the pain. And now I'm off the wound vac, so I should be good. And I was thinking to myself, this has never happened to me. This is not the usual conversation, how surprised I was. But I didn't make the assumption. I asked some open-ended questions, and she got there quicker than I was ever going to get there. Because I think that when we first learned about communication, especially during the pandemic with vaccine hesitancy, we all thought we would engage in skills of persuasion. How do I persuade you to do the right thing, right? What we found is that's not really very effective. Me selling you like a used car, an idea or a treatment doesn't really work nearly as well than if I engage you, I'm a better listener, and I hear about your lived experience. What are you bringing to the table that I should know about? Okay, so we're going to switch gears a little bit and talk about communicating uncertainty. So this is kind of a new area, and a lot of it was developed through research from Thomas Jefferson University and ERs. And so let's find out how we can do that in our space, because there is a lot of uncertainty. So these are first kind of some ground rules. First of all, we should acknowledge that diagnostic messiness that already exists. So how many of you realize that 1/3 of the diagnoses in the ER are symptom-based diagnoses? That's a really big number. So you have a headache, you have chest pain. I'm not really sure why. But knowing that can really explain that this is not very uncommon. So we want to build up our tolerance for some uncertainty and also read the room. What is our tolerance for our patients and their families for uncertainty? Knowing that is really important. So everybody wants us to explain what we see. What's our strategy as a clinician? Are we ruling out dangerous things first and now we're honing in on what's wrong? How are we using the information? What information do we have? And what is it that we really want more to know? How are we going to be able to move forward? So this was from the ABIM, fantastic webinar. I've given you the link. Highly recommend to watch it. And from this, there is a communication plan that we can use in our setting. So I'd like to go through it. So first, I think one of the most important things is who else should be in the room when we're talking about uncertainty? Because it's complicated, right? And I know we've all had those situations where we've gone through the whole thing with the patient, and then the daughter calls and said, "What's going on? What is that?" And we have to go through that conversation again, and sometimes 3 times. And so inviting others into the room, maybe on speakerphone, so you can say it once. Acknowledge and being transparent about the uncertainty. This is what we know, and these are the questions we still have. And then our thought process. So you had chest pain. I don't think it's cardiac. We're trying a Pepsid. Maybe it is a reflux problem. What do we see? What are our thoughts? And then folding in the patient's goals. And so what are their goals? Do they want to stay where they are? Are they wanting to be really aggressive? And then the discussion and the shared decision-making. This is what you told me is important to you. Finally, that check-in. Are we on the same page? Did you hear me and did I hear you? And me hearing you is much more important, of course. And then the most important thing is the reassurance. I'm going to try to help you. I am on your team. And I am invested in your care. So this is some of the research. Now this checklist, which is made for the ER, is 3 pages long, not all that useful, 3 pages long. But discussing the diagnoses that were excluded, discussing the results, what we have, what do we know, and then managing patient expectations. So what is most important to you? And then validating the patient's experience. validating their symptoms. Okay, so you all have, hold on, this on your table, and I want to give you two options. So first, I think we should try it out. How would you talk with a patient about uncertainty? Now, if this doesn't fit your wheelhouse, what I'd love for you as an alternative is to try to build trust in a few minutes. So pair up, have twos or even threes, and either talk about how you would communicate the causes of the patient's abdominal pain. How would you have that discussion? Or how would you enter the room and introduce yourself and start building that trust? So I'm going to give you a few minutes. I'm going to try to look at the clock, which I can't see. Oh, I see. Okay, we're good. So first person start. I'm going to give you 2 minutes, and then I'm going to ask you to switch, and I want you all to try it out. Go. Okay, let's have you switch partners. Okay, let's have you finish up. All right. Okay, we're going to get back and going. Oh my gosh, it's a chatty group. Okay, so let's see where we can go from here. So what about when things are changing? What do you think that the communication should look like when your COPD, your end-stage COPD was stable, everything was good, but not so much anymore? Things have changed. So this is when a structured pause and reassessment is a really good idea. Evaluating the current status and sharing that with the resident and their family. What options are available now? And then that shared decision-making. But the most important thing in this moment, when everything is kind of going to heck, is to have consistent communication from everyone. What we've learned from the research is there's nothing more disconcerting and concerning from patient-family perspective when people are telling them all different things. So one member of your team is saying, oh, I think you should go to the hospital, but the other member of their team is saying, I think we can try some things here. And then maybe a nurse is saying something different, and the social worker is saying something different. This is really unnerving to patients and their families. And so making that communication plan with your team first, Mrs. Jones is declining. She's losing weight. And this is what I think would be a good step forward, making sure you have consensus. And then from your team perspective, you want to hear all the other ideas. I think she should do this, but maybe someone else has a better idea. So listening to one another and formulating a strategy in which you all know what the game plan is a gift of communication to our patients and their families. So, of course, we could spend the entire day on communication for advanced care planning, but I wanted to touch on some new research that can help us with this communication. And we're going to have another poll coming up. So hang on to your hat. Okay. So there are two big challenges that we often see when we talk about advanced care planning in our space, in post-acute and long-term care. First of all, to help patients translate that diagnosis and prognosis with the goals of care and preferences that they're telling us, but often they don't match. So my goal is to feel comfortable, but I really want to go to the hospital for the 12th time and see if they can cure me, but that's not comfortable. And so there's a mismatch there. The other mismatch that we're challenged with is patients want us to be honest about the prognostic information, and they also want us to be optimistic. Well, that's a little tricky too, because often people are not in a place where it's easy to be optimistic. So how do we navigate this? So our next poll, not when a patient is in crisis, not when we are making that big decision, but maybe on admission. So we're talking about advanced care planning, and maybe this is one of, I hope, a couple of discussions. How long does it take from the research to have a beginning advanced care planning discussion, the first one of many, when it's not a crisis? So I'd like you to yell out in minutes, how long do you think it really takes? A little louder. 20 minutes? What else? 45 to 60 minutes. So they measure this for a reasonable, not all-encompassing, reasonable beginning end of care conversation. It takes about 9 to 14 minutes. What was interesting is when the providers were interviewed before they had this discussion, they were convinced it was going to take 30 minutes. So it doesn't mean that this is an all-encompassing discussion, but it's a beginning. And so I think that there's anxiety to have this discussion because you're like, oh my goodness, it is going to take quite a long time. But to open the door to this discussion actually doesn't take all that long, and it's a gift we can give. So I'd like to present that we have a new strategy. This is based on a New England Journal of Medicine article that I love. This is, if you read one article this year, this should be the one. It's about doing communication with serious illness. And this is what they propose, that instead of expecting that patients immediately accept their harsh new reality, that we support them in the fact that they can build that capacity to come to terms with the likelihood of dying. So they get some time. And what this is called is prognostic awareness. We always think that if you get the diagnosis of metastatic lung cancer and you come to us, that you're going to want comfort care or hospice, but you're probably not there yet. And we kind of think it should be instant, but that's very rarely the case. So this is a series of conversations, a strategy that we can use so that we can connect, well, the patient is telling me one thing, they want to be comfortable, and they want to go back to the hospital every time. How does that make sense? This is that prognostic awareness circle. It has to do with some cycling conversations so that people can build some coping mechanisms. so that they can start building that resilience to accept this new, very harsh reality. Accepting your mortality is a tall order. And so having the time to really assimilate this new information is everything. And so we should expect that this is going to take a little bit of time. If we continue to have these thoughtful discussions, talks about worries, hopes, dreams, how are you going to navigate this? Then you can help people build that resiliency. What this leads to, people think, oh, doesn't it diminish hope? And they studied that, and it doesn't. It actually increases quality of life, increases a sense of security. These folks really want to work with me. And it increases the ideas of hope and stability. So here's some secret sauce for some advanced care planning from that idea of prognostic awareness, allowing patient that time to integrate the prognostic information, not only cognitively, but emotionally. And knowing that people are going to oscillate. So this has been shown. At some points, they're very hopeful. I'm going to beat this. I'm going to get cured, to more pragmatic, realistic options. And that oscillation should be expected. When we expect this, that makes it a little bit easier because we're not as frustrated. I don't understand why they want to go back to the hospital again. This doesn't make any sense. So now when we expect it, we're going to kind of, again, enter the room with some humility and some understanding. And then allow the patient to explore their hopes and their worries, building those coping skills. And then after we receive that information from them, what's their goals, we can make a recommendation. So, Mrs. Jones, it sounds like from what you're telling me is so important to you. I think that this next option might really fit well for you. Okay, so one of our last topics is how to effectively and empathetically communicate with people who are struggling with invisible illnesses and complex chronic disorders. So there was great research on this too. And some 4 common misperceptions, erroneously assuming that assumptions about the patients and their lived experiences, misattributing and misdiagnosing with psychological disorders, comparison with more better defined diseases because it's kind of easier. I can tell you if you have rheumatoid arthritis, some other forms of arthritis are a little bit hard to pin down. And then communicating from a paternalistic perspective, assuming that the patient's knowledge, understanding, and experiences are substandard or invalid. There is nothing more diminishing than for someone to look at you and say, what you're feeling is not valid. You can only imagine how that feels. So I really like this. This is a little bit far away, so I'm hoping I can read it. I may turn myself here. So I love this. These are 2 things about what not to say. I'm going to okay, we're going to go through them. I've made these mistakes too. Okay, you don't look sick. You need to stay positive. At least it's not cancer. Learn to live with it. I've said this before. Good news, your tests are normal. With someone with an invisible illness, there is nothing more demeaning to say, you're normal. It's in your head. Many people have it worse. Have you tried yoga, walking? You feel sick because you are anxious, depressed, stressed. Find something productive to do with your time. Okay, there's more. You need to get out of bed, get a job. You look too young, skinny, pretty to be sick. We don't have a treatment for your illness. Again, that one sentence is really demoralizing. We don't have anything to offer you. You need to stop thinking about your symptoms so much. And I used to have a mug that said this, don't confuse your Google search with my medical degree. Yeah, not helpful. Okay, why don't we try these instead? I know it can feel discouraging to feel so sick, and especially for so long. We will work on this together. Again, don't compare other diseases that are more easily diagnosed. The tests we have run so far are not showing any abnormalities, and we have excluded certain conditions based on the results of these tests. What are the things that you have tried and have or have not helped for you? Again, that engagement. Let's ask some good questions. We will talk about the available treatments that we have that can make you feel better. Let's give some options. Let's provide some pathways. Okay, the last part is how to communicate better with each other. I think we all know in this room when we have a team in which we can communicate with each other, not only do the patients receive better care, but we are happier. It is fun to go to work when you have a team in which you feel you can talk to one another. So how could we improve upon that? So I really like this nonviolent communication. I don't know, how many of you have heard about nonviolent communication? A couple of people. Okay, well, I'm going to give you the speed version of nonviolent communication. This is something we could spend the next 2 days on, and so hang on, but we're going to do this kind of quickly. Okay, there are a set of skills that support communication model based on empathy. And here, empathy is a quality of understanding the other person's experience without judgment. Not, I'm right, you're wrong, you can tell me anything you like, but I'm right and you're wrong. That actually doesn't work out. Okay, and I would like to bring in the perspective of time. Sometimes we feel, why it takes too much time to invest in these relationships, it takes too much time to have all these conversations. In the end, what we've found is that it saves you time. If you have good working relationships and good communications with your coworkers, then you're going to save a lot of time in the future and you're going to be more effective. The other thing I kind of chuckle to myself every time I see nonviolent communication is that it's communication. How could it possibly be violent? My hands are in my pockets. Usually the violence starts with a judgment, thinking of ourselves, the other person, as wrong or bad or inadequate, and then blaming ourselves or the other person. Nobody wants to feel that way. It ends up destroying the relationship, and there's no place to go then. So again, I've done a lot of this. These are non-empathetic responses that shut down the communication with our coworkers. So immediately offering advice. I have a lot of advice. I'm not going to share it as much anymore. Minimizing, trying to see the bright side, ignoring, questioning, offering refraining, explaining. The reason I'm telling you this is so that you understand, not very good to say, diagnosing, shaming, criticizing or judging, reassuring, tempting to do that, of course, storytelling. This reminds me, I do a lot of that too, and so I'm going to try to do less. But I think the thing in the room that we can all often lean on is we want to fix it. We want to educate. And so doing that first can often make the other person at the other end of that conversation feel really invisible, not being heard and not being seen. So what should we do instead? Again, it's back to that listening. Listen first with respect and empathy, but I love the idea of perspective taking. You can understand the other person's perspective without agreeing with them. It doesn't mean you agree, but you're certainly able to hear them out, to listen to where are they coming from. And then impact sharing, hearing the other person's reaction and the impact on them without judgment, blame, or shame. Mrs. Jones's daughter just screamed at me because she wants a UA, because she's sure her mom has a UTI. Now, we can agree that that's not a reason to order a UA, but we can also appreciate what the impact on my colleague was to be screamed at for 5 or 10 minutes and kind of be diminished. This probably doesn't feel very good. So again, you can understand the other person's perspective and the impact without agreeing with them. And when you hear them, all of a sudden they feel, heard. Okay. It's important to understand power differences, especially I think in our setting. To open up that door so a CNA or housekeeping or someone can come and tell you about something, and that conversation feels honored, is imperative. CNAs do remarkable work. They often have the most information in the room. And us opening up that door so they feel safe and they feel welcome to share that information can be a game changer for the quality of care that we're able to provide. So addressing those power differentials is a game changer. Tending to the relationship first. This is one of my other favorite things I learned. This I learned from Paige Hector, who is a social worker. She was here in Colorado, and she delivers nonviolent communication information for post-acute and long-term care. And she said, saying I understand very rarely delivers the feeling of understanding. And so I try to not say that without delivering the fact that I really do understand what you're saying and where you're coming from. Empathy before education and a connection before correction. Instead of jumping to stage 2 to fix the problem, you're much better served for connecting with the person and hearing where they're coming from and then solving the problem together. Okay. So, nonviolent communication, communicating with each other. When a connection is made, and both people have been heard, then you want to go to step 2 to try to solve the problem. Would it be helpful for you to hear? Asking a question. An action request is the next step. After you have all the information that you've needed, it's most effective if it's a win-win, right? If I get my needs satisfied, you get your needs satisfied, we both feel like we're respecting each other, and you have to decide what sounds natural for you. What are your phrases that are going to work for you? Not every phrase is for everybody, right? Would it work if we? Would it work for you if? I love starting sentences that way because it says we're in it together, we're a team. And we're going to have this really good working relationship so that we can really talk to each other, and the patient and the family are going to benefit, and the community. Okay. So here are some just pearls for nonviolent communication. First, very reactive sometimes when someone's yelling at somebody. Put on your own oxygen mask first. Figure out where you're coming from. Start with some empathy and understanding. Pivot from just the reaction mode, which is really tempting, to some perspective taking. The daughter is yelling at me because she really cares about her mom. She's really nervous and she's exhausted. She's been here every single day. I can understand that. Tend to the relationship first. Shame and blame are never useful. When you are tempted to kind of bury somebody, think to yourself, undoing the feeling that you just had your coworker feel is almost impossible. They will not forget that quickly. And so coming from a place of caring and empathy is really the way to go. And then practice what phrases work for you. Have them in your back pocket. Okay, so these are my 7 best takeaways from this presentation. Read the room, understand where the patient and family are coming from, have some intellectual humility. Remember the Reese's peanut butter cups. Everybody loves them. Effective communication is built on the foundation of trust. Trust is now the new ultimate power in the room. If someone trusts you, then you have a place to go. Listening is a skill. Be present, sit down, don't interrupt in 15 seconds, and check for understanding. When communicating uncertainty, check to see if the patient wants someone else in the room. Discuss what you know, what you see, and options for next steps. When discussing advanced care planning, allow time and space for some prognostic awareness. Give people time to understand their mortality. When communicating with each other, tend to the relationship first. It's more important than the point you're trying to make. Make sure you make the person feel that they matter, that they're heard, and that you respect them before you offer advice, education, or solutions. I've got some references. I just want to point out the last reference here, Paige Hector, remarkable. She has a website. I would absolutely go visit it. And then here are some podcasts from PALTmed that are fantastic. Thank you.
Oh, do you want your sign?
I am recovering from laryngitis.
That was amazing, and we never would have known. Yeah, thank you so much for that wonderful presentation, bringing your kindness and your wisdom, and helping us all be better. Yeah. So at this time,